Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. The first time I killed someone, I didn't even move. I just thought it. Omen's Rest was the kind of town that always looked like the sun had better places to be. The clouds were a permanent ceiling, bruised gray and low enough to press on your skull if you stared too long. The streets were damp, slick with last night's drizzle, and the street lamps were still buzzing even though it was noon. I was leaning against the chipped counter of the Galloway Grand Hotel, coffee cooling in my hands, and pretending the front desk bell wasn't about to give me a migraine. The lobby always smelled like lavender cleaner and old carpet, like the place was trying too hard to convince you it wasn't rotting from the inside out. Another day, another entitled guest. The guy in front of me was red-faced, sweaty, and furious, slamming his credit card on the counter so hard it skidded to the floor. "This is unacceptable," he barked, voice cracking in that way only the truly self-important can manage. The sheets weren't even pressed. I paid for luxury, not this. Behind him, Stacy, my coworker, and the only reason I hadn't quit this job already, was trying not to roll her eyes straight into the back of her head. Her name tag was crooked, her ponytail lopsided, and she'd been listening to this guy rant for 10 minutes while I topped off my coffee. The man leaned in close to her, too close, his spit flecking her cheek. "You people don't even know what customer service is." Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the lack of sleep. Maybe it was the fact that I'd been up until 4 a.m., grinding through a horror game with Lon and Fade, my only two functional relationships in this bleak excuse for a town. Maybe it was just him. I thought, no, willed, a thought so sharp it almost cut my tongue. "I hope you choke on your own damn words." The man's face went still. At first, I thought he was pausing for dramatic effect, winding up for another round of shouting. But then his eyes went wide, so wide I saw the veins branch in them like red lightning. He clawed at his throat. The scream that left him was wet, guttural. It didn't sound like pain. It sounded like someone was being dragged out of his skin from the inside. He staggered back, mouth opening and closing, lips foaming. His body buckled in half like his spine had snapped. Stacy screamed. Someone in the lobby dropped their luggage, the thud echoing like a gunshot. And then he collapsed, flat on the polished lobby floor, eyes still open. Dead. The bell above the front door chimed as if someone had just walked in. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there, coffee cooling in my hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs, staring at the body on the floor like I could rewind the last 30 seconds if I concentrated hard enough. The guests were screaming. Stacy was crying. Someone was calling 911. But all I could think was one single cold, crawling thought. I didn't touch him. I hadn't even moved. I didn't sleep after the man in the lobby died. I lay on my bed in the apartment I shared with Lon, staring at the cracked ceiling while the hum of the fridge and the muted buzz of the TV in the next room pressed against my skull. My brain kept looping one thought. I didn't touch him. Lon, of course, was unfazed. He leaned in my doorway, hair sticking up like an anime character that had given up, a cup of instant ramen in his hand. "Are we calling this one a mental breakdown?" he said, slurping, "or a superpower?" I threw a pillow at him. He dodged it. Lon was my best friend, a walking pile of sarcasm in thrift store band tees. Fade, our third limb, showed up 10 minutes later, letting himself in with the spare key he never asked for. He sprawled on my couch, already untying his boots. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Fade said, peering at me with sharp, lazy eyes. "Or killed one." "Not funny," I muttered. "They made jokes because that's what we did. It kept the dark from seeping in too far." But I wasn't laughing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's throat twisting, his spine bending like his body was trying to fold in on itself. Lon stretched out like a cat, plopping onto the couch beside Fade. "Know what'll fix this existential crisis? Coffee. And maybe a psychic," Fade added. "Come on, it's almost Halloween. The whole town's covered in fake cobwebs and pumpkin crap. We might as well go see one of those spiritual nights or whatever. Get your aura cleansed or some shiz." I stared at him. "A psychic? Really?" He grinned. "Hey, at least it'll be funny." The psychic shop was wedged between a shuttered hardware store and a pawn shop with a broken neon sign that just said PAN. The bell over the door let out a flat clank when we pushed it open, and the smell hit me immediately. Incense and something sour. Inside, it was all heavy drapes and candlelight, like we'd stepped into the inside of a lung. Dust floated in the air like snow. The psychic sat behind a warped wooden table. She looked like she'd been sitting there forever. Long black dress, jewelry that clinked softly when she moved, eyes milky but sharp. She smiled at us like she'd been waiting. "You brought him," she said, voice like dry paper. Lon elbowed me. "Told you you're special." The woman motioned me forward with 2 crooked fingers. I sat. Her hand was cold when she grabbed mine, too cold, like something pulled heat from me the moment we touched. She closed her eyes. The room felt like it tilted. Then she gasped. Her eyes shot open wide, rolling so far back I saw white. Her grip on my hand tightened, nails digging into my skin until I felt blood bead. "Your blood," she rasped. "It thinks in curses." The air thickened, the candles guttered. Lon laughed nervously. "Okay, that's metal. 10 out of 10 tagline for your life, Val." But the psychic wasn't joking. She was trembling violently, her head snapping back like an invisible hand yanked her by the skull. "You're the air," she hissed, her voice breaking, "and it's waking up." My stomach dropped. "The hell are you talking about?" She stared straight into my eyes. No, through them. "The thoughts will turn. They'll turn into..." She convulsed. A sound tore out of her that didn't belong in a human throat, and before I could pull away, she slumped forward across the table, her head thudding against the wood, still, silent. Dead. Lon broke the silence first. Well," he blinked. "Guess we don't need to Venmo her now." "Jesus Christ," Fade muttered, stepping back. She just..." I yanked my hand back, staring at the smear of blood where her nails had bitten into my skin. Something cold coiled in my stomach. The words stuck in my head like they'd been carved there. "Your blood thinks in curses." For a moment, nobody breathed. The psychic's body slumped forward, her cheek pressed against the scarred wood table, mouth half open like she'd died mid-word. A candle near her elbow flickered so hard it spat wax across the table, hissing like it didn't want to be here either. "Is she..." Lon leaned sideways, hands jammed deep in his hoodie pocket. Dead, or like retail job dead?" "Lon," my voice cracked. "What?" "You know, passed out but wakes up when they hear the right ringtone." Fade crouched beside her, knuckles whitening as he reached out and pressed 2 fingers against her neck. He didn't even bother counting seconds before pulling his hand back. "She's gone," he whispered. The room went impossibly still. The incense smoke swirled in the corners like it was trying to find a way out. I stared at the psychic's limp hand, the chipped rings on her fingers, the blood smeared across my own skin where she'd clawed me. My blood thinks in curses. Lon blew out a breath through his nose and muttered, "Guess we're not leaving a tip." Fade's head snapped up. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "I cope with humor," Lon hissed back, but his voice was thin, like he didn't believe his own excuse. I pushed my chair back. The legs screeched against the warped wood floor, the sound too loud, too sharp. I stood, but the room tilted like I'd been spun around blindfolded. "Val," Fade said, voice tight, "don't touch her, just don't." Like I needed to be told. The three of us shuffled out of the shop like we were moving through wet cement. The door's bell clanged flat and ugly when it closed behind us. The street outside was empty, but it felt crowded somehow, like someone was watching from every cracked window, every warped doorway. Lon shoved his hands deeper into his hoodie pocket. "Okay, so, anyone else wondering if we're accessories to murder?" "She had a heart attack," I muttered. "Yeah, after screaming that your blood thinks in curses and then gouging your hand like she was looking for proof," Lon shot back. "Totally natural." Fade kept glancing over his shoulder like something might be following. His breath puffed in the October air, sharp and uneven. "Do we call somebody?" he asked. I imagined dialing 911, telling them a psychic had grabbed me, screamed something insane, then just dropped dead. I imagined the cops standing in that incense-choked room, looking from me to her and back again. "No," I said. The word felt heavier than it should have. We didn't talk much on the walk back. The streets of Omen's Rest weren't made for silence. They creaked and groaned like they had arthritis, wind cutting through alleys that always seemed narrower than they'd been yesterday. We passed the pawn shop with the dead neon sign. The PAN hummed and buzzed like a dying insect. A single street lamp sputtered overhead, light jerking on and off in spasms. When it went dark for half a second, I thought I saw something across the street. A shape just off the sidewalk, too tall, too still. The lamp flared back to life. The shape was gone. Lon didn't notice. Fade did. He glanced at me, his face pale. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. Back at the apartment, Lon tossed his hoodie over the couch like it hadn't just witnessed a woman die, and Fade collapsed into the armchair, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I stood in the doorway, staring at my hand. The scratches from the psychic's nails were still there, angry and red, like the skin itself didn't want to heal. Her voice slid through my skull again. "Your blood thinks in curses." I sank onto the couch, the springs groaning under me. Lon turned on the TV, too loud, too bright, and muttered, "We don't talk about this again, right?" But we all knew we would. Sleep didn't come. I lay in bed staring at the cracks in the ceiling that spread like spider webs, the hum of the fridge beyond my door pulsing like a heartbeat I didn't trust. Every time I blinked, I saw the psychic's face, her eyes rolling back, the blood on my hand, her voice dragging through my skull like barbed wire. "Your blood thinks in curses." The scratches on my hand burned. By morning, my head throbbed from no sleep and too much thinking, and the sky outside was the same dull slate it always was. Omen's Rest didn't do sunrises. It just brightened from pitch black to a paler shade of dead. Lon banged on my door, already chewing a Pop-Tart. "Val, you're late, like super late, again." I dragged myself up, washed my face in cold water, and stared into the bathroom sink like it might tell me what was wrong with me. Nothing, just me, and the faint taste of metal on my tongue. The hotel lobby was packed when I got there, a convention of some kind. Middle-aged people in cheap suits clutching folders and name tags. The air smelled like perfume and desperation. I slipped behind the counter, muttering a morning to Stacy, who was already drowning in complaints. "Thank God you're here," she hissed without looking at me, or I was about to climb on this desk and just... She didn't finish the sentence because a man in an ill-fitting suit slammed a coffee-stained map onto the counter so hard the bell rattled. "Someone took my parking spot," he snapped, face red, breath sour. I blinked at him, bone-tired. And I demand compensation. He pounded the counter again, the veins in his forehead popping like worms under glass. "I should have you all fired." I didn't mean to think it. I really didn't, but the words slid through my brain like oil anyway. "Break your damn arm already." The man spun to storm off, and as his hand slammed the rotating door, his foot slid on the polished tile. The sound his arm made when it hit the marble floor was wrong, too loud, too sharp. A snapping, tearing crunch that made the entire lobby flinch. The man screamed, a raw guttural howl, as his arm bent backward, bone-piercing skin like a white spear. Blood soaked his sleeve in seconds. The guests gasped. Stacy shrieked. I just stood there, coffee cup frozen halfway to my lips, my stomach turning to ice. By the time the paramedics arrived, the lobby looked like a crime scene. Blood on the tiles, the man unconscious from shock, his arm twisted like a mangled tree branch. Stacy leaned on the counter, trembling. "What the hell is happening in this place?" she whispered. I couldn't answer, because the truth was worse than anything I could say out loud. I'd thought it, and it happened again. That night, back at the apartment, Lon sprawled across the couch with a game controller, staring at the "Game Over" screen like it had personally offended him. "You're pacing," he said without looking up. "Am not," I muttered, pacing. Fade sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes on me, quiet in that way he only got when he was actually worried. "You okay?" "Fine," I lied. But my head was buzzing. That man's scream wouldn't leave my ears. I turned toward the window, the October fog pressing against the glass like a living thing. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw something shift in the mist, something too tall, too thin, standing still as a telephone pole. I blinked. Gone. I sat down hard on the couch, grabbed a throw pillow, and clutched it to my chest like it might hold me together. "I think," I said slowly, voice shaking despite my best sarcasm, "I'm broken." Lon snorted. "You were already broken, dude." But the laugh didn't stick this time. Even he could see something was seriously wrong. By nightfall, the apartment felt wrong. Not just old building creaky pipes, wrong like the walls were listening. Lon was sprawled across the couch, mashing buttons on his controller like the game had personally insulted him. The blue light from the TV painted his face in jerky flashes, and the sound of gunfire from the game didn't cover the silence under it, the silence of a place that felt too awake. Fade sat on the floor with his knees pulled up, staring at the flickering light in the hallway. "Why's that lamp doing that?" Lon didn't look up. "Because this building is from, like, the Dark Ages." But it wasn't just the lamp. The kitchen sink dripped steadily, a soft plink, plink, plink that seemed too loud, too deliberate. The bathroom door eased itself shut with a sigh, though no one was near it. Every now and then, something in the apartment would just pop, like the air was shifting in places it shouldn't. I sat at the edge of the armchair, the controller in my lap, but my hands still, staring at the window. The fog outside pressed so hard against the glass it looked like it wanted in. I could have sworn I saw something move in it, again, too tall, too thin, but when I leaned closer, it melted back into the mist like it had never been there. Val. Fade's voice made me flinch. You seeing this? He nodded toward the kitchen. A spoon slid off the counter by itself, landing on the tile with a soft, metallic clink. Lon paused his game finally, his controller stilling. Okay, he said, his voice light in that fake casual way he used when he didn't want to admit he was unnerved. I'm gonna need someone to tell me our place isn't haunted because... Then we all heard it, a whisper. It came from nowhere and everywhere all at once, a wet, crawling voice that scraped against the inside of my head. Think harder. I stood up so fast the chair groaned. Did you hear that? Lon blinked. Hear what? Don't mess with me, I snapped. Fade's face went pale. I heard something, he said quietly. Another whisper slithered through the room, soft as mold creeping. I'll make it real. The lamp in the hallway went out completely. We all froze, our own breath suddenly too loud. At midnight, Lon passed out on the couch with his hoodie over his face and the controller still in his hand. Fade dozed in the armchair, one shoe off, one on, like a cat napping in enemy territory. I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop, the screen a harsh glow against the gloom. I didn't know what I was searching for exactly, just that I needed answers, any answers. I typed my last name first, Valkyrie Family Omen's Rest History. The search bar filled with dust-dry results, ancestry sites, blurry photos of graveyards, weird forum posts. One thread caught my eye. The Curse Trade, Old Families of Omen's Rest. The post was old, the kind of web page that looked like it had been abandoned years ago. The font was jagged, the background pitch black. I scrolled, heart pounding. There were 7 families who traded blood for gold here long ago. Deals struck with a thing called the Collector. Blood bought their riches, but every child born after would pay. The thoughts of the heir would rot, and only bad things would grow from what they imagined. I sat back, the words burning into my brain. Blood for gold, thoughts that rot, bad things growing. My stomach knotted, because that wasn't a story. That was me. From the hallway, the lamp that had burned out flickered back to life for just 1 second, and in that single second, the light reflected on the glass of the window, showing me my own face in the darkness. Only for a heartbeat, my eyes weren't mine. They were black. I didn't mean to dream them. I didn't even remember falling asleep. Just a blackout gap between staring at the laptop screen and jerking awake on the couch, mouth dry, neck stiff, and the taste of blood in my teeth like I'd bitten my tongue in my sleep. Lon was snoring with his hoodie over his face. Fade was a lump in the armchair, clutching the TV remote like it could ward off evil. The living room was dark except for the muted glow of the paused video game on the screen. And for a second, I thought someone else was in the room. A tall, still shape in the far corner, pressed so close to the shadow it almost disappeared. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. Gone. By morning, the fog was thicker, heavy enough that the buildings across the street looked like they'd been erased. Omen's Rest smelled like rain-soaked concrete and something faintly metallic, like pennies pressed to the tongue. I tried to drink coffee in the hotel break room, but my hands shook so bad the cup rattled against the table. That's when it happened again. A kid, not much older than me, was running down the hall in a panic, slamming a mop bucket into walls. "Room 214, he gasped. There's something wrong." We followed him. The door to 214 was cracked open, and the second I stepped inside, I knew. The room smelled like rot. The man in the bed, maybe late 30s, business suit hanging on the chair like he'd just checked in last night, was sitting upright, his mouth open in a soundless scream, and his eyes. There weren't two anymore. There were dozens, hundreds, tiny, glistening eyes sprouting across his face, his neck, his arms, bulging under the skin like bloated pearls. Each one blinked independently, twitching and wet. Stacy gagged, someone screamed. I stumbled back into the hallway, bile crawling up my throat. Because I'd dreamed this, I remembered it suddenly, flashes of last night's sleep, the faceless blur of a nightmare where I'd thought, what if someone had eyes everywhere? And now he did. Word spread fast. By noon, 2 more guests had episodes. A woman whose mouth sealed over, skin stretching tight across her lips until there was nothing there but smooth flesh. A man whose legs bent backward like broken animal limbs. Every time I looked at someone, I caught myself thinking things, tiny, irritated thoughts. Shut up, go away, break, choke, stop breathing, and then something horrible would happen. My thoughts weren't mine anymore. They were weapons. That night, the 3 of us sat in the apartment, all the lights on, not talking much. Fade's arm was in a sling from where he'd been shoved out of the way when one of the hotel guests lunged. One of my creations, though I couldn't bring myself to say it. He'd barely survived being crushed in the chaos. Lon stared at me across the couch, his usual sarcasm drained out, face pale and serious. "Val," he said finally, "you're not imagining this, are you?" I shook my head. My voice cracked when I spoke. "I think I'm killing the town." From the kitchen, the tap turned on by itself, water running dark for a second before clearing. The 3 of us stared at it. Nobody moved. Then Fade said, voice soft and shaking, "What happens if you dream again?" Outside, in the fog-choked street, something screamed. It wasn't human. It wasn't even close. I didn't think I'd fallen asleep. One second I was on the couch, watching the condensation drip down the coffee table glass. Lon half asleep with his hoodie over his head, Fade wrapped in a blanket like a burrito. The next second, I wasn't in the apartment anymore. I was in a hallway, but it wasn't the hotel, and it wasn't home. It was endless, walls warped like they were melting, carpet the color of old teeth. Doors lined both sides, all cracked open, just enough for shadows to slip through. I could hear breathing behind them, not mine, not human. At the far end of the hallway, a figure waited, tall, too tall. Its head brushed the ceiling. It wore a coat stitched from things I didn't want to name. Faded leather, something that looked suspiciously like skin. Coins dangled from chains around its wrists, clinking softly with each twitch of its fingers. Its face wasn't a face at all. It was a hollow black void with a single thing inside it. A wide white grin that wasn't made of teeth so much as the idea of teeth. The grin widened. "Little air." The voice wasn't a voice. It was every voice I'd ever heard. Stacy's laugh, Lon's sarcasm, my own muttered curses, layered on top of each other, all wrong, all stretched thin. "You've been thinking." My throat went dry. What are you?" The grin flickered wider, impossibly wide, like a tear splitting through a painting. "The one your blood remembers, the one your great-grandfather bargained with. They called me many names, little air, but you—" The shadow's head tilted, vertebrae cracking like breaking wood. "You can call me the Collector." The air turned heavy like someone had poured cement into my lungs. They traded blood for gold, and I took their minds as payment. Every heir after would think, and I would feast. Feast? My voice cracked, a pathetic echo in that endless hallway. Every dark thought, every small, ugly wish. You dream it, I drink it. You hate it, I shape it. I took a step back. The carpet squished beneath my shoes, wet with something warm. Behind the doors, the breathing got louder. You think you can stop thinking? The collector hissed, leaning forward, his face almost splitting into the doorway of my mind. He whispered in a voice like a blade dragging across glass. You can't, because even now you're thinking about me. The doors on either side of the hallway slammed open, and things poured out. Things I didn't remember dreaming, but must have. A child with a hollow face, no mouth, only a single eye blinking in the center of its forehead. A man stitched wrong, his arms sewn where his legs should be. A dozen jawless people crawling on their bellies, hands scraping the carpet. They skittered toward me. I ran. I woke up choking on my own breath. The apartment ceiling swam into focus. Lon was still asleep. Fade stirred in the armchair, eyes fluttering open at my ragged gasps. Val, what happened? But I couldn't answer, because my nose was bleeding, thick black-red drops spattering my hoodie, and the scratches on my hand had split open, blood welling up like the collector's grin had clawed its way into my veins, and in my head, still, his whisper. Think harder, little heir. I'm hungry. The screaming started before the sun was even up. It wasn't distant anymore. It wasn't the kind of screaming you could mistake for a fox in the woods or a car backfiring. It was close, human, and endless, as if someone had ripped the lid off hell and left the microphone on. Lon woke first, the hoodie falling off his face as his head shot up. What the actual... Fade didn't even finish sitting upright. He was already on his feet, yanking the blinds back. The fog outside wasn't fog anymore. It was thick, churning, rolling down the street like a living thing. Shapes moved inside it. Tall, short, crawling shapes that blurred when you tried to look straight at them. And then something slammed into the front door. Hard. Once, twice. On the third hit, the wood cracked. Val, Lon said, voice flat. He wasn't even trying to hide the shake in it. What did you dream? I couldn't answer. My head throbbed like the collector's grin was carved into my skull, every thought feeding him. Another slam. The hinges screamed. Then the door shattered inward, splintering into a spray of wood and paint, and the things came in. They weren't exactly monsters. They were ideas of monsters. A man crawled in first. No, what was left of one. His body bent in half backwards, spine jutting like broken glass. His head lolled to the side, mouth sewn shut, blood crusted over the stitches. Behind him, a dog with human hands for paws scuttled through the frame, its eyes milky and wide, teeth clicking like chattering bones. Something taller than the doorway ducked its head and came through last. A thing with too many elbows, its arms folding the wrong way, fingers brushing the floor as it walked. It smiled. They all smiled. Lon grabbed the first thing his hand found, a mug, and threw it. It shattered against the wall, but the things didn't even flinch. Out! Out! Fade screamed, grabbing my arm, yanking me toward the kitchen. We ran. The hallway warped around us, the walls breathing, the floor squirming like wet muscle. This isn't the building, I gasped, stumbling. It's me. Oh God, it's me. We burst through the back door into the alley. The fog met us there, and in it the collector stood, not in the dream this time, here, in the flesh, or whatever passed for flesh in him, the coat stitched from skin, the coin chains clinking softly as he tilted his too long head, grin carved wide enough to split the air. The whispers became a roar. Think harder. The town collapsed in seconds. Windows shattered without being touched. Cars twisted on themselves like tin foil. People, neighbors, strangers screamed as their bodies warped into my nightmares. A woman's arms splitting into wings of raw, wet skin. A man's jaw unhinging until it cracked off entirely. A child's shadow peeling off the pavement and standing taller than his body. Every awful thing I'd imagined, every flash of irritation, every nightmare was pouring into Omen's rest like blood from an open wound. Lon pulled me by the collar, eyes wild. "Val, snap the hell out of it." Fade shoved a trash bin into one of the dog things, sending it screeching back into the fog, but another crawled over it instantly. I couldn't move because the collector stepped closer. He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. The air around him went heavy, thick, pulling my lungs inside out. "Look at them, little air." His voice was syrup slow, inescapable. "You think, and they break. You dream, and they bleed. Do you see now? You are my seed." I shook my head, hands pressed to my ears, but his voice was inside, under my skin. "I can't stop it," I choked. "I can't." Lon grabbed my shoulders, shaking me so hard my teeth clacked. "Yes, you can!" His eyes locked on mine, sharp and desperate. "You're not him. You're not this thing. You're you." Something cracked in me then, not like bone, like a thought snapping in half. I stopped fighting the thoughts and started forcing them. I pictured the things freezing in place. The crawling man, the hand dog, the tall, wrong-smiled thing. All of them stopped, just for a second. It was enough. Lon and Fade yanked me back, shoving through the fog, across the street, into the chaos. We didn't win, not really. But we lived. By the time we stumbled onto the road out of town, Omen's Rest behind us looked like it had been painted over in horror. Buildings leaning wrong, fog thick as wet wool, screams still carrying. Lon's hoodie was ripped, his knuckles bloody. Fade's arm was in a makeshift sling. My own clothes were stiff with dried blood. We collapsed against the hood of an abandoned car, gasping, shivering, staring at the gray horizon. For a moment, there was silence. Then, faintly, so faintly, "Think harder." Epilogue. We never really left. We drove until the road blurred into fog, and the fog blurred into nothing until the signs didn't name towns anymore. They just stood blank and broken by the wind. But every time we stopped, every gas station, every empty rest stop, it was there. The smell of Omen's Rest, the buzzing fog in my teeth, the way people stared too long like they'd seen me in a dream. Lon won't say it out loud. Fade won't either. But we all feel it. The curse didn't stay behind. It came with us. Last night I dreamed of something new. A woman with glass teeth, a crow with a man's voice, a town drowning in black water, street lamps bending like necks. When I woke up, my phone was buzzing with news alerts. A town 2 states over, flooded overnight. Street lamps collapsed in every street. I used to think if I didn't say the bad thoughts, they couldn't hurt anyone. Now I know better. I don't have to say them. I just have to think. And the collector is still in my head, always grinning, always whispering. Think harder.